You know that moment when the ground beneath your feet just disappears? When everything you thought you knew about your life turns out to be a carefully constructed lie? I never imagined mine would come during what was supposed to be a routine family dinner. I was sitting in my home office that Tuesday evening, debugging code for my latest software project, when Mom called me downstairs. The house felt warm and familiar around me, filled with the subtle improvements I'd made over the years. The new hardwood floors I'd installed 2 summers ago gleamed under the kitchen lights. The custom shelving I'd built in the living room displayed family photos and my grandmother's china. Every corner of this place held memories of my sweat, my money, my love. Ashley, come join us for dinner. Mom's voice carried up the stairs with an unusual edge I couldn't quite place. I saved my work and headed downstairs, expecting the usual conversation about Brandon's latest adventures in California or Dad's retirement plans. Instead, I found my parents sitting stiffly at the dining table, their faces wearing expressions I'd never seen before. Cold, distant, almost hostile. "Sit down, honey," Dad said. But there was nothing honey-sweet in his tone. I pulled out my chair, the same one I'd sat in for countless family meals, and waited. The silence stretched uncomfortably until Dad cleared his throat. "Ashley, your mother and I have made a decision." His words fell like stones into still water. "You have 48 hours to pack your things and find somewhere else to live. This house belongs to Brandon now." The fork I'd been holding clattered to my plate. I stared at him, waiting for the punchline, for someone to tell me this was some kind of cruel joke. But Mom just sat there, staring at her hands, refusing to meet my eyes. "I'm sorry." "What did you just say?" My voice came out smaller than I intended. "You heard me correctly," Dad continued, his tone businesslike and final. "Brandon is moving back from California, and she needs a place to stay. This house will be hers." The words hit me like physical blows. This house that I'd saved from foreclosure 5 years ago when Dad lost his job. This house where I'd spent $30,000 of my own money on repairs and renovations. This house where I'd lived rent-free. Yes, but only because I'd been paying the mortgage, the utilities, the property taxes, everything that kept it standing. "But I started, then stopped. What was the point? Their minds were clearly made up. I stood up slowly, my legs feeling unsteady. 48 hours, I repeated. That should be plenty of time. Mom finally spoke, her voice as cold as winter wind. I walked upstairs to my room, my footsteps echoing in the sudden silence. Behind me, I could hear my parents resuming their dinner conversation as if nothing had happened. As if they hadn't just ripped my world apart with a few casual sentences. In my bedroom, I sat on the edge of the bed I'd bought 3 years ago and looked around at the space I'd created. The walls I'd painted a soft blue. The window treatments I'd carefully selected. The reading nook where I'd spent countless evenings with my books and my laptop. Everything here was mine. Bought with my money. Chosen with my taste. Arranged with my hands. But apparently, none of it mattered. I picked up my phone and called the one person I knew would understand. Chloe had been my best friend since college. And as a lawyer, she had a way of cutting through emotional chaos to find the facts underneath. "Hey girl. What's up?" she answered on the second ring. "Chloe, I need your help," I managed to say before my voice cracked. 20 minutes later, she was at my door, armed with a bottle of wine and her legal pad. I told her everything, watching her lawyer instincts kick in as she scribbled notes and asked pointed questions. "Wait a minute," she said, looking up from her notes. "Didn't your grandfather Arthur leave a will when he died? This was his house originally, right?" A spark of hope flickered in my chest. He did mention something once about making sure I'd always have a home, but I assumed he just meant I'd always be welcome here with my parents. "Ashley, we need to find that will. Tonight." The next morning, Chloe and I drove to the office of Grandpa Arthur's old lawyer, then to the county courthouse, then to every possible place a will might be filed. By 3 in the afternoon, we were exhausted and discouraged. Then Chloe's phone rang. "You're not going to believe this," she said after hanging up. "The clerk found it. Your grandfather's will is on file. And Ashley, you need to sit down. We were standing in the courthouse parking lot, but I sat down on a nearby bench anyway. What does it say? It says the house goes to you. Not your parents. You. Arthur left the house directly to his granddaughter Ashley Hayes, with a provision that your parents could live there as long as they needed. But ownership would transfer to you upon his death. The world tilted sideways. When was this will filed? 3 years before he died. It's been legally binding this entire time. Your parents have been hiding this from you. The betrayal hit me like a physical blow. Not only had they tried to give away my home, but they'd been lying to me for years about who actually owned it. I wasn't just a daughter they wanted to kick out. I was the rightful owner they'd been deceiving. What do I do now? I asked. Chloe smiled. And it wasn't a nice smile. Now? Now you take back what's yours. I spent that evening making a list. Everything I'd bought for the house over the years. The 65-inch television in the living room. The leather sectional sofa. The dining room table and chairs I'd purchased when Mom complained about the old set being too wobbly. The washer and dryer. The microwave. The coffee maker. The expensive pots and pans. Even the lamps and the curtains. Then I called Green Mountain Movers. I need a moving crew tomorrow morning. I told Tom, the owner. Everything needs to be out by noon. That's pretty short notice. Miss. You sure about the timeline? I'm absolutely sure. And Tom, I'll pay double your normal rate for the rush job. The next morning, I woke up in my house for what I thought might be the last time. But as I watched the moving crew arrive, I realized it wasn't the last time at all. It was the first day of taking control of what was mine. I directed the movers with calm precision. That television. Yes. The entire entertainment center. All of the living room furniture except the old recliner in the corner. That stays. The dining set. All of it. The bedroom furniture from upstairs. Second door on the right. Mrs. Henderson from next door wandered over around 10 o'clock. Curiosity getting the better of her discretion. Spring cleaning. Dear, she asked, watching the parade of furniture being loaded into the truck. Something like that. I replied with a smile that didn't reach my eyes. Just making sure everything ends up where it belongs. By 11:30, the house looked completely different. The walls seemed bigger, emptier, echoing with each footstep. I'd left behind only the pieces that had belonged to Grandpa Arthur. The furniture he'd chosen. The items that held his memory. Everything else, everything I'd paid for, was loaded and ready to go. That's when Brandon's car pulled into the driveway. She climbed out of her silver BMW, dragging designer luggage behind her, looking every bit the California princess she'd become. Her blonde hair was perfectly styled. Her clothes obviously expensive. Her attitude radiating the same entitlement that had driven me crazy throughout our childhood. She walked through the front door without knocking. Because of course she did. Then she stopped dead in her tracks. What the hell happened in here? She demanded, spinning around to face me. Where's all the furniture? I took back what belongs to me. I said calmly. What do you mean? What belongs to you? Mom and Dad said this house is mine now. You can't just take stuff. I can take the things I paid for. That couch you're looking for? I bought it. The television? Mine. The dining room table? I have the receipt. Brandon's face was turning an interesting shade of red. You can't do this. This is my house now. Actually, it's not. I pulled out the copy of Grandpa Arthur's will that Chloe had given me and handed it to her. It's my house. It's been my house for the past 8 years. Mom and Dad just forgot to mention that little detail. Brandon scanned the document, her expression shifting from anger to confusion to something approaching panic. This can't be right. They promised me. They promised you something that wasn't theirs to give. But where am I supposed to live? For the first time in years. Brandon sounded less like a entitled princess and more like the little sister who used to follow me around. I honestly don't know. Brandon, maybe you could try getting your own place, like I did when I moved out of Mom and Dad's the first time? With what money? I spent everything I had getting ready to move back here. That wasn't my problem. But I didn't say so. Instead, I walked to the front door and held it open. You might want to call Mom and Dad. I'm sure they'll help you figure something out. After Brandon left, after the movers finished loading the last of my belongings, I stood in the empty shell of what had been my home and felt something I hadn't expected. Relief. For the first time in years, I wasn't carrying the weight of other people's expectations or their problems. My phone started ringing around 6 that evening. Mom. Dad. Mom again. Brandon. Dad. I let them all go to voicemail. I was sitting in Chloe's apartment, eating takeout Chinese food and planning my next move. You could stay here as long as you need, Chloe offered, refilling my wine glass. Thanks. But I think I need my own space. I'm going to look for an apartment tomorrow. What about the house? Are you going to live there? I'd been thinking about that all afternoon. No. Too many memories. Too much baggage. I'm going to sell it. Chloe nearly choked on her wine. Sell it? Ashley. Do you know what that property is worth? Enough to buy something that's completely mine. Something they can never take away because it never belonged to them in the first place. The next morning, I called a real estate agent. By afternoon, we had a listing price and professional photos scheduled. The house would go on the market within the week. My phone finally stopped ringing around noon. Then it started again. But this time it was a number I didn't recognize. Hello. Is this Ashley Hayes? The voice was professional. Courteous. Yes. Who's calling? This is David Martinez. Well, I was Brandon's boyfriend. We broke up a few months ago. But she called me this morning in tears, going on about some house drama. I wanted to reach out because, honestly, I think you deserve to know what she was planning. This was interesting. I'm listening. Brandon has been bragging for months about how she was going to get her parents' house for free. She quit her job in San Francisco because she said she wouldn't need to work anymore once she had a free place to live. She was planning to rent out rooms to cover her expenses and just live off that income. The picture became even clearer. Brandon hadn't just been planning to take my home. She'd been planning to turn it into her personal cash cow. There's more, David continued. She borrowed money from me to pay off her credit cards because she said she'd pay me back once she was settled in the house. About $15,000. I'm sorry. David. It sounds like she misled you too. Yeah. Well. Lesson learned. But I thought you should know what kind of situation you were dealing with. Brandon can be manipulative when she wants something. After I hung up, I realized that my family's betrayal ran even deeper than I'd originally thought. This hadn't been a spur-of-the-moment decision. They'd been planning this for months. Maybe longer. They'd been setting me up to lose my home while Brandon set herself up for a life of easy money. The house sold faster than anyone expected. A young couple with 2 kids fell in love with the space and the neighborhood, and they made an offer above asking price. When their financing came through, I realized I was about to be the owner of more money than I'd ever had at one time. The closing was scheduled for a Friday afternoon. Thursday evening, my parents finally showed up at Chloe's apartment. Ashley, we need to talk, Dad said when I opened the door. No. We don't. Please. Sweetheart. We can work this out, Mom added, her voice carrying a pleading note I'd never heard before. There's nothing to work out. You tried to steal my house and give it to Brandon. The only reason you're here now is because your plan backfired. We never meant for things to go this far, Dad said. We thought you'd just find another place and everything would be fine. You thought I'd just disappear quietly so you could hand my inheritance over to your favorite daughter? Mom flinched. It's not about favorites. Ashley. Brandon needed help. And you've always been so independent. Independent because I had to be. Because every time Brandon needed something, you gave it to her. Every time I needed something, you told me to figure it out myself. We made mistakes, Dad admitted. But we're family. We can fix this. No, I said firmly. We can't. You broke something that can't be fixed. You lied to me for 8 years about who owned the house I was pouring my money into. You were willing to let me believe I was homeless so Brandon could have what she wanted. That's not family. That's just biology. The closing went smoothly. The new owners were excited about their purchase, and I walked away with a check that represented not just money, but freedom. Freedom from people who saw me as a resource to be used rather than a person to be loved. I found an apartment in Burlington, close to my job but far enough from my parents to feel safe. It was smaller than the house, but it was mine in every sense of the word. I bought new furniture, chose new colors, created new spaces that held no memories of betrayal or disappointment. 3 months later, Chloe stopped by with wine and updates. Your parents had to move to a rental place on the outskirts of town, she reported, settling into my new couch. Word got around about the will situation. People are talking. And Brandon? Back in California, working as a waitress to pay her bills. Apparently she had to sell her car to cover the deposit on a studio apartment. I should have felt satisfaction. But mostly I just felt tired. What about David? Did she ever pay him back? Nope. He had to take her to small claims court. Good for him. Chloe studied my face carefully. How are you doing? Really? I looked around my apartment, at the life I'd built completely on my own terms. I'm good. Better than good. Actually, I'm free. Any regrets? Just one, I said, raising my wine glass. I regret not doing this sooner. 6 months later, I got a promotion at work. My new role came with better pay, more responsibility, and the respect of colleagues who valued my skills and judgment. I was dating again, carefully but optimistically. I had hobbies that weren't centered around maintaining other people's property or managing other people's problems. Sometimes people asked me if I missed my family. The honest answer was that I missed the family I thought I had. But I didn't miss the family they actually were. I missed the illusion, not the reality. I learned that love without respect isn't really love at all. I learned that being family doesn't give people the right to treat you badly. I learned that sometimes the strongest thing you can do is walk away from people who refuse to value you. Most importantly, I learned that my worth wasn't determined by how useful I was to other people. It wasn't measured by how much I was willing to sacrifice or how quietly I was willing to disappear. My worth was inherent, unconditional, and mine to protect. The house that should have been mine was gone, sold to people who would love it properly. But I discovered something better, a life that was completely, authentically, unapologetically mine. And no one could ever take that away from me again.